In January 1909, newspapers across New Jersey reported a wave of strange footprints, night sightings, and panic around the creature people called the Jersey Devil. That week matters because it shows the legend doing something bigger than one monster story. A name moved through towns. A forest became evidence. An ordinary uncertainty turned into a regional alarm. That is the first clue. The Jersey Devil is not just a creature in a forest. It is a story machine built out of the Pine Barrens, the Leeds family legend, local newspapers, and a century of retellings. And the rational explanation, once you dig into it, can feel more unsettling than the monster itself. The Pine Barrens are huge, remote, and easy to mythologize. Dense woods, sandy soil, low light, long stretches of isolation. That landscape does a lot of work before any folklore gets added. It can feel empty from one angle and full of hidden life from another. That tension matters. If a place already feels hard to read, then every odd sound, every brief movement, and every glimpse through the trees becomes story fuel. The Jersey Devil did not need a studio system to become famous. The Pine Barrens were already doing the atmosphere. One reason this legend survived is that the name itself is unforgettable. Jersey Devil sounds local, specific, and instantly suspicious. It feels like a regional secret that has been dragged into daylight. That is powerful packaging. But the deeper clue is that folklore rarely survives because of one perfect eyewitness account. It survives because a name becomes a container. Once people can point at it, joke about it, fear it, or retell it, the story starts gathering momentum. And the Jersey Devil gathered plenty. What began as local folklore became newspaper legend, then travel myth, then pop culture icon. That long chain is part of the mystery. The most repeated origin story links the Jersey Devil to the Leeds family in colonial New Jersey. Over time, the details changed and expanded in different retellings. That is normal folklore behavior. The story grows roots in a real place and then starts branching. Some versions focus on a birth curse. Some focus on a frightening creature in the woods. Some focus on local misfortune and family scandal. The exact historical core is harder to pin down than the legend suggests. But that uncertainty is not a weakness. It is what lets the story keep breathing. The monster becomes a vessel for every detail people cannot fully verify. The Jersey Devil feels real because the setting feels real. If you hear a sound in a dark forest or catch movement in low visibility, your brain fills the gap instantly. That is not fraud. That is perception. The Pine Barrens, with their shadows, brush, and long lines of sight, are perfect for that kind of uncertainty. And once a story keeps repeating in that environment, the legend begins to feel like part of the ecosystem. That is why the rational explanation is scarier. It says the mystery may not be a single monster at all. It may be a place, a pattern, and a century of people teaching each other how to be afraid of the same landscape. Newspapers and local rumor helped turn the Jersey Devil from a regional tale into a wider phenomenon. Once a monster story enters print, it gains a new kind of life. It can be repeated. It can be exaggerated. It can cross town lines. And it can survive long after the original context has faded. That is why the story kept returning. Every new wave of attention made it easier for the next wave to find the legend already waiting. Modern viral culture did not invent this. It inherited it. The Jersey Devil is an early example of a story that knew how to spread before the internet existed. When people report a monster in a place like the Pine Barrens, they are often reacting to the same environmental triggers. Low visibility, odd sounds, distance, fatigue, and the expectation that something strange might already be there. That means sightings can cluster without requiring a creature to be present. The environment keeps generating the same kind of uncertainty. And uncertainty is the fuel folklore runs on. The Jersey Devil story is powerful because it fits that pattern so well. Once the Jersey Devil becomes a destination story, it starts feeding itself. Tourism keeps the name alive. Merch keeps the name visible. Local identity keeps the name protected. And every new retelling lowers the barrier for the next one. That is how a rumor becomes a durable cultural object. The monster may never be confirmed, but the legend becomes easier and easier to find. At that point, the story is no longer just about what was seen in the woods. It is about how a place teaches people to keep seeing it. Once a legend becomes local identity, it becomes hard to kill. People use it in humor. They use it in sports branding. They use it as shorthand for the weirdness of the region. That does two things at once. It keeps the story visible, and it turns the monster into a cultural asset. Now the Jersey Devil is no longer just something to fear. It is something to reference. That shift is a huge part of why the legend still pulls attention today. The rational explanation is scarier because it does not need a monster to work. All it needs is a landscape that invites misreading, a press that repeats the story, and a culture ready to turn uncertainty into folklore. That means the Jersey Devil can survive without ever being proven real. It can survive because it is useful. Useful for warning. Useful for branding. Useful for local identity. Useful for entertainment. And once a story becomes useful in that many ways, it becomes very difficult to dislodge. Facts can be forgotten. Stories that fit a landscape are harder to erase. The Jersey Devil survived because it had the right ingredients at the right time: isolation, repeatable fear, a memorable name, print media, and a region willing to keep the story alive. That is not a supernatural outcome. It is a cultural one. And cultural stories can be much harder to kill than factual ones, because they keep being useful even when proof never arrives. That is the real reason the Jersey Devil still matters. Here is the important documentary line. The Jersey Devil is famous. It is persistent. It is culturally powerful. But it is not a verified creature case. That distinction matters. The story is interesting precisely because it can survive without hard proof. That tells you something about how folklore works. It does not need to be true in a literal sense to be socially real. It only needs enough repetition, place memory, and emotional charge to keep people talking. And Jersey has all three. So what is the Jersey Devil, really? Probably not a single solved creature. More likely a combination of landscape, local history, newspaper amplification, and the human need to put a face on uncertainty. That is the rational explanation. And it is scarier because it means the monster does not need claws to survive. It only needs a dark forest, a good name, and people who are ready to keep the story going. That is how legends become permanent. Not by proving themselves, by becoming useful. And once a story is useful enough, people keep carrying it forward long after they stop asking whether it was ever literal. That is the real mystery. Not whether the devil was ever there, but why the name still fits the woods so well. That is how a rumor becomes part of a landscape. And landscapes are slow to forget. That is the whole trick. If the Jersey Devil made you think differently about folklore, stay with the Mystery Atlas TV. The next investigation follows another place where landscape, rumor, and memory collide. Subscribe for the full series, and tell me in the comments whether you think the Jersey Devil is mostly creature, culture, or newspaper legend.